evening. I'd like to call our meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Have the clerk please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Trustee Germain?
Here.
Trustee Harper?
Here.
Trustee Petrucci?
Here.
Supervisor Fountain?
Here.
Clerk Hopkins here. Treasurer Horning? Here. Trustee Kalani?
Here.
We have a quorum of the board. We also have present Township Manager James Whitman.
Thank you. Item number 4 is approval of our meeting agenda.
So moved.
Support. Motion by Treasurer Horning, second by Trustee Germain. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye. 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 Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item number 5 is called to the public. Anybody at call to the public this evening? Being nobody at call to the public, we'll move on to item number 6, which is approval of our consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Trustee Kalani, second by Trustee Petrucci. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item number 7 is pending business. This is a Lake Tyrone resolution for Act 185 contract for the Hartland Lake Tyrone sewer engineers, estimates, and costs. It's part of the process. Manager Whitman.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just briefly, it was about a year ago that the board last took action on this at a joint meeting with Tyrone Township, where by resolution we requested the Drain Commissioner's Office to put together a 185 contract to start that process. This resolution and the contract that goes with it is a result of that. We have reviewed it with our bond attorney as well as with Tyrone Township and reviewed it with staff. And there were a couple of changes made to the satisfaction of everyone in the conversations. And hopefully you should have received a revised copy earlier today with a couple clarifications regarding the capacity issue. That is the one that we're proposing for approval tonight, is the revised version sent out today. Other than that, happy to answer any other questions. This will keep the process moving. They'll be doing bid letting next month, and that should put us at a public hearing for the Special Assessment District in January.
I will, here's the resolution. I think it's right here. I'll move resolution number 13. We've already done that one. So what do you need? Just a motion to approve the contract?
This is a motion to approve the resolution to approve the Act 185 contract for the Lake Tyrone sewer.
I was trying to find that.
I don't think that has a number on the resolution.
They don't get a number yet until after the fact now.
Okay. Here we go. So I will move resolution to approve the Livingston County Lake Tyrone sanitary sewer drain improvement contract for the Lake Tyrone sewer.
Support. Motion by Trustee Kalani, second by Trustee Harper. Any questions? I do have one question. Since this is a agreement between two entities, this portion is just the Hartland's residence portion, correct, of the contract?
Well, we will be, there's 3 parties. Tyrone Township will be approving tonight the same contract. You see on the signature page that they would sign the same document as we, and it lays out the proportion by percentage of the costs.
Right.
So,
It's a 3-party agreement.
yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
I had a chance to review this document a while back. James forwarded it, and I sent some comments off to John Axe, and it looks like they incorporated some of the comments that I had. So
Okay.
I want to appreciate that James did reach out.
Okay. Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments, will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Harper?
Yes.
Trustee Petrucci?
Yes.
Supervisor Fountain?
Yes.
Clerk Hopkins, yes. Treasurer Horning?
Yes. Trustee Kalini?
Yes.
Trustee Germain?
Yes.
Resolution carries.
Thank you. Next item on our business is new business, number 8A, Lake Tyrone weed aeration. Manager Wickman.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. This is unrelated to the sewers. There, of course, exists a Lake Improvement Board for Lake Tyrone. Residents up there have circulated a petition asking for consideration of a new project for helping control the weeds there. And by statute, each of the individual townships need to give direction to the Lake Improvement Board to consider new projects. This resolution would do that. And the petitions, they submitted enough petitions to show that there's strong support for this. With that, I'd offer the resolution or answer any of the questions the board may have.
I notice there's a grant here from Enbridge.
Yeah.
That being applied.
You may recall that Tyrone Township, when they received a grant from Enbridge, they used it to do a pilot project for this issue on Lake Tyrone. And based on the interest and success in that, this was to expand the project for the whole lake. So that was just to give you some background as to what they had previously looked at before for a pilot project.
I'm sorry, who's our representative on the Lake Improvement Board from the township?
Bob West is.
Okay.
I'd like to move to approve the resolution authorizing Lake Tyrone Improvement Board to conduct proceedings to bring about the desired lake improvements.
Support.
Motion by Treasurer Horning, second by Clerk Hopkins. Discussion? Will they be working with then Tyrone Township as a unit again, as a lake improvement board for the entire lake?
Yeah, Lake Improvement Board has appointees from both townships.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Being none, have the clerk please call the roll.
Trustee Petrucci?
Yes.
Supervisor Fountain?
Yes.
Clerk Hopkins, yes. Treasurer Horning?
Yes.
Trustee Kalani?
Yes.
Trustee Germain?
Yes.
Trustee Harper?
Yes.
Resolution carries.
Thank you. Item number 9 is board reports, and we start this evening with Trustee Germain.
I have no report.
Trustee Harper.
No report.
Trustee Petrucci.
No report.
Clerk Hopkins.
I'd just like to inform the board that I got a notification from the county late last week that the election has been certified by the County Board of Canvassers and is now in the hands of the State Board of Canvassers. So, in that, I just wanted to let you know tomorrow or Thursday I'm going to forward to you a large spreadsheet that I've been working on over the past several elections. It details voter turnout and number of people that vote in the precinct, number of AVs, just kind of, I find it interesting. I use it, when I'm ordering supplies and things like that to kind of give me an idea of what has happened in the past in particular elections, but I just thought maybe you guys would like to see it, so I'll email it to you rather than print it to you because it's probably kind of big. Yep. That's
Thank you. Treasurer Horning.
The county commission approved our L4029 last night, and our bills are at the printer, the tax bills, and the residents will be having them mailed out on November 26th.
Thank you. Trustee Kalani.
I have nothing to report.
Just briefly, did attend a meeting with the Oakland County Road Commission and forwarded that information, the notes from that to the board. But I think we have a good contact, and I think we should reach out to that group and see if there's an opportunity for us at some point down the road to start discussions. I was surprised at how small the numbers were on that road, their daily numbers. I think it was 1,800. And I know we have several dirt roads or gravel roads in our community that exceed that by a lot. So it was quite interesting how they put that together, and that was done 80% with federal money. So I did talk to the gentleman, and he thought, of course, different county, but he thought that would be a good idea to, down the road, have that road be continued all the way across. So I will forward it, I'll give that card to James, and he can forward it to whoever, either Bob West or whoever else. I'm not even sure where we would go with that, other than we do have the contacts at this point, and if that would go to the committee, or where the information...
Well, we would, certainly Bob can reach out, and we'll meet with the road commission tomorrow, of course, to start working on the implementation plan of the millage, and that would be a continued conversation with the road commission, who would be our advocate and representative in those cases.
Right.
And we would certainly be asking them to do that on our behalf, and we'll continue to ask them to do that. Clyde Road, Fenton Road, Pleasant Valley, Hacker Road, those are major county roads where multiple parties coming to the table with funding really is what ought to be happening, and that'll always be our message to county, state, federal representatives.
I think, I would agree with Bill. I think we need to stay in the forefront of that. My concern is that now that we have a millage, that we run into a situation where monies that would otherwise have been perhaps allocated to repair roads in Hartland somehow get diverted to other parts of the county, and I think we need to be part of that strategic discussion with the road commission, because that can easily be something that will happen. That's one thing. Number two, you mentioned you have a meeting with the road commission, and I know this is not a topic, but I think in the future it would be nice if perhaps maybe a few of the task force members also participate maybe in discussions with the road commission. I think that having other members of the community see how, put a face to some of the road commissioners and the road commission staff, and they can ask questions, because sometimes that gets lost in translation, and they're our biggest advocates are some of those members of that task force. Just something I would suggest we do.
Thank you. That's all I had. Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just a couple things I'd highlight from the operational report, and actually a couple of maybe quick inquiries for the board. I did report on, we're also meeting with Mayberry Homes tomorrow. They're interested in extending the water line down there, and just want to review our policies for reimbursement should somebody else connect to their line, to the line that they extend. We do have policies for that. We'll talk to them. They also made me aware that they do have an apartment developer who's interested in taking over the project on the north side of the road, the north parcel. And their question is along the lines of that apartment developer seems to be interested in moving faster than what Mayberry is able to do right now, and it's possible they may be ready to move forward and take down that property before Mayberry has completed a conceptual plan for the south side of the road. As it stands, the agreement would say, slow down one step at a time. They're asking whether we would consider allowing that deal to move forward, and that they, continue with their conceptual plan for the south side of the road. And I just thought I'd plant the seed or ask for some feedback here on that thought, because can certainly go either way with it. On the one hand, it is two distinct pieces of property on one side of the road. It would be different if they were asking to chop off the front 40 of that 80-acre piece and develop that without a plan for the rest. Would it be the same as if we had two different buyers in the first place for those two properties? Would we be willing to consider that? And of course, we want to we have some interest in having some development that's makes some sense together and works together there, and that we may have a desire to see the whole concept before we move too fast. I don't know if the board has any particular thoughts on that. I want to be educated when I start talking to them tomorrow. Of course, any conversations we have moving towards something different than what the purchase agreement contemplates will come back here for approval before I do that, and I'm happy to have any feedback from the board.
My thoughts are that they're two separate site plans, the north side and the south side. And my biggest concern would be to make sure that there's cohesiveness with traffic and those types of things, similar to what the other pattern book was.
Yeah.
I don't envision us needing both the north and south site plan to be done before they start construction on either side. That's just kind of how I look at it, but I'm not sure.
That's the question.
Does the board have other comments?
So have they said anything, I mean, are they looking at that whole north piece as
sounds like-
apartments?
It sounds like. I don't know if they're thinking commercial up front like the previous. I don't have many details at all.
So, I mean, that would kind of be, I mean, they certainly can both stand on their own, I think, with a road like M59 in between them. The Newberry Place, when they were looking at that, you know, both elements had some commercial up front, and it kind of made sense to kind of coordinate that. So I guess my question would rise, if they were thinking of doing something like that, then I think there would be some coordination factor you'd want to do. But if they're looking at developing it all as residential on that side, I don't know that it necessarily needs a conceptual from the south side to be completed to do the north side. But I don't understand how the sale thing would all work, because are they going to, Newberry going to take down the north side?
The north side would have to have a conceptual. I mean, basically, the north side would have to be moving on a PD process right now, basically, and then once they get, if they were to get through that in a reasonable amount of time, then closing could take place. But that would have to happen first, no matter whether it's them or another buyer they broker with.
I guess that's the way I envisioned this whole process, was that they would do their due diligence on the north side, get started on that and get the plan, the PD process approved, and then they could move into the second.
Well,
Isn't that the way it was?
the agreement contemplates that they would move forward with a PD conceptual for both sides of the road. Because we have a couple issues that we have vested interest in, and of course, is the distribution RUs,
Right.
and any land divisions that take place. And so, knowing what the concept plan for both sides of the road is really what we need to know for the sustainability of the RUs, depending on how they want to divide them. Now, I imagine if they were ready with a conceptual plan for the north side of the road that used more than their proportional need of RUs, that would be easier to say, okay, then that less burden on the south, we might be less concerned, but without seeing those conceptual plans, it's hard to say.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate that, and if anybody has any other thoughts, certainly point in my direction. The other thing is we are ready to move forward with SEMCOG. If you saw my note, there is no membership term. It's 1 year from starting when you pay the dues. So we can go ahead and get that in for next month. The only requirement they need from us is a designation of a delegate and an alternate. I know there had been some discussion amongst the board of who that might be. Just wanted to see if there was consensus on that I can let them know when before we pay the dues for that.
I'd like to nominate Joe Galaney.
As the delegate? Support?
I'll second that.
Is that an official motion?
A motion? As a consensus?
Do we have a consensus?
Sure.
That's fine.
As far as the alternate, is there any?
I would
think we should
consider
have
being,
an alternate,
I'd
too.
consider being the alternate unless somebody else wants to do it.
That's fine.
All right?
Okay, very good. Thank you. That's all the highlights I had. Happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you. I'll move on to our information and discussion, the strategic plan final draft.
You may be sick of seeing this by now, but I'm by Obviously, my goal is to give you every opportunity to give us feedback and guidance along the way. As it stands, this is the final draft that we're offering on behalf of staff. There may be a couple of dates that move around if we, just because there's some variables that are playing out there yet. Notably, I guess I should just identify that, related to 3.5 with the gateway signs, we're looking at trying to figure out whether developing the plan for those makes sense as soon as April of next year, or whether we might move that back. I just sort of dropped that in there as a placeholder for communications. We're still, she's going to kind of draw out an action plan for that, and we'll let you know whether we might ask to push that back. I think everything else is fairly solid. 2016, we weren't trying to put anything in stone. If we knew, the month that was logical to be, we put the month. Otherwise, we're going to be here a year from now approving another rolling 2-year strategic plan, so we can nail those down at that time. The other thing I would propose, and I don't know if I've reviewed this with you, is I would look for us to do a 6-month review. And I know some board members have inquired about this before, about maybe moving target dates, after we've adopted it. I'm not necessarily a big fan of it. There are certainly compelling and mitigating reasons to do that. My compromise on behalf of the directors was to do a 6-month review and say if there are any dates worthy of being moved, we do it then, and we only do that once. That would align with our probably doing our next retreat a little bit earlier in the year, maybe July, August next year, and moving into, so it'd be past the halfway point of the year and start thinking about the next rolling 2-year strategic plan. So I would offer that. Otherwise, there is a blank there, you'll note, under 3.5. That's the only goal that is pretty squarely a board champion goal, and that is to hold a joint meeting with the Board of Education related to our joint interests and, potential for mutual goal setting. I don't know if the board has any particular thought on when that makes sense, or I have talked with Jan Sifferman about that. She thinks the board would certainly be open to that. I'm sure at some point Supervisor will want to talk with Mr. DeMond and kind of mull that over too. But does the board have any thoughts on a good timing for that from your perspective?
I was thinking after our budget cycle.
Okay.
So I was thinking maybe like April or May. School's starting to kind of end. I know it's a busy time for you guys through tax season.
May's my best month.
To do something.
Yeah, because one roll's finished.
So I would say offer maybe May. Is it?
I think that'd be good timing. I think it's important to talk with them before Mayberry gets going too far down the road, because I think that's part of the discussion.
Right.
What's the impact going to be of this to your schools?
Okay.
Stuff like that, so.
Even late April.
So May, end of April, first part of May.
Because they might be getting busy in May
Yeah.
with
Right.
Right. We'll want to ask them how their timetable looks.
What's good for us may not be good for them.
I do know they definitely want to wait till after the first of the year, because they do have a new board member coming on. And
But Larry makes a good point.
Yep.
I mean, with the new development, that may impact some of their operations, and certainly will impact their operations. And then I think we also need to start early stages about, we talked about having a substation for the fire somewhere out that way at one point, and I don't know where the authority is on those discussions, if it's too early, but rather have those discussions now and get some idea what they're thinking.
it's on the note for when we get into the PD process on those, we'll definitely be talking about that.
I do have just a few comments.
Yes.
Under 1.5, the zip code improvement strategy, it looks like me it's going to be another year out, according to the schedule. I don't know what's entailed in that, but from a business's perspective, I think that's, and I don't know all the different details are involved, but I'd like to see that moved up if possible. I don't know what we get traded out. That's just a thought.
Okay.
And under 1.3, under the pathway network, does that deal with sidewalks? The non-motorized pathway network?
Yes, that's sidewalks. That's a technical.
Wasn't a lot of that work already done through the committee?
At the basic level, yes. If you have seen a non-motorized transportation plan, it's sort of like, Parks Master Plan. There's some standard things and some other background stuff and inventories. A little more work, a little more heft to it goes into it. Nothing, not as significant as Parks Master Plan, but just kind of pulling together so that when we are looking at starting to talk with SEMCOG about regional opportunities and those types of things, that's the kind of, background they want to know. We have lines drawn on a paper, and that's fine, and that's going to be probably fine to pursue a TAP grant along M59. But for those other regional collaborations, they need a little more background, I guess you could say.
So but this doesn't mean that we couldn't still, if there was a sidewalk project we wanted to look at, continue down that path. I believe part of our strategy was to take some general fund dollars that we had put in the roads and start
Yes.
marking those towards...
Excellent question. This by no means is contemplating delaying moving forward with the sidewalks that the task force said do these right away. We'll still plan to move forward with those. This is more of the 20-year vision of what walking and biking in Hartland Township could look like and how it could relate to our neighbors, big picture stuff kind of thing.
And my last question is, do we typically update the Boyle model annually or every 2 years?
We do it annually.
Okay, because I didn't see it marked again in 2016.
Yeah, that's
Got it.
good call.
You got it in February, so maybe it should be February of the following year.
Yeah, in fact, you'll have, several of these will have the next step in 2016. Most of these, we just kind of put the first couple steps. Yeah, that would definitely show up again.
Would it work, or would it be something to consider, just putting, if it's an annual event, put like in that underneath 1.1, you press A for annual?
Sure.
It's going to occur every year. I don't know. That was all the questions I had. Others? Board members?
Under 1.4 you were just talking about?
2.3.
No, what you're talking about the...
2.3.
2.3 was the Boyle model.
Well, doesn't the same annual thing apply to 1.4 with the winter event?
We'll see.
We'll see how this works. I think we should have it next week.
Ask me in 3 months.
Okay.
I do agree with Bill on the zip code issue, I think.
I'd like to see if that would... scope is on that.
Yeah, so for this strategic plan, I have a deliverable to you next month of what that strategy might be. So without knowing what strategy is, I guess I was somewhat hesitant to say we're going to do it by then, because haven't fully vetted the action plan.
Okay.
And so we can, but that being said, this is your document. If you are interested in seeing that move up to a certain date, and that's a priority for you, let me know what that is. Is there a certain time next year that you'd like to see us start putting an action plan into place? My thought is that the most likely outcome that we've talked about is potentially some compromise where the zip codes stay in place and where folks are allowed to use, Hartland Township as a substitute for Howell or whatever else is there. Implementation of that, We've got bureaucracy at the Postal Service, because they do have to approve such things, things that aren't necessarily out of my control. If we were to rename this, say, begin implementation or begin pursuing the strategy by a certain date, that'd probably be easier to name it. And say, we'll at least start the process by then. My report's coming to you next month, and then that should lay out a little bit clearer picture of what that looks like. If the board would like to start implementing that soon thereafter, I guess you can...
Well, let's take a look to see what you come up with, and maybe we can perhaps set a date at that point.
Well, I'm hoping to finalize this,
Yeah. Next meeting, right?
at the next meeting.
January 2015, then.
Start implementing January 2015?
So December, you're going to give us what your strategies are.
Yes.
And then what this could be is start implementing the strategies.
Yes,
right?
correct.
I mean, so I would think that without knowing exactly what things are on your plate, I mean, would 6 months from that, so June, would that be a...
Oh, at the latest, if I can just get through budget season, into March or April, probably April is a reasonable, just see what else
I see April. And we give our annual report to the chamber in May, and I think that would be a good thing that we're moving forward with, and I think our businesses would appreciate that. And we all understand that you can't just wave your magic zip code wand.
What's it worth to you?
James, I had a quick question. I noticed there's 3 things that have lines through them. Why are those lined out?
I just wanted to make you aware of things that we ultimately deleted after staff conversation, because we didn't think that they necessarily measured the specific goal that we were after. So starting under 2.5, the last one there, second phase of process maps. After talking internally, we discovered that we covered a lot of good ground with those process maps, and there really isn't a second phase that's worth mentioning. It's onesies and twosies here that are not strategic. Everybody did a good job of not only picking the high priority ones, but including other ones, so that one we crossed off. 3.4. That was the original idea of how we're going to tackle this comprehensive plan. The one above it basically is the proxy for that. In 2016, we'll come up with that plan more specifically, so we didn't want to get too detailed. And then under 3.5, we combined gateway signs, wayfinding, and branded signage all into one. So I just didn't want to delete anything without being transparent in the revisions we made.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
Yes, I have a couple. I'm curious the logic on why we would propose reviewing the special events ordinance in 2016 when we really truly want to try to start using our parks and things sooner than that, hopefully.
Part of it is a workload thing. I mean, we have a number, the planning department will be the first one to tell you that they have the highest number of tasks on the strategic plan. Not all, some are more than others, of course. So we were trying to anticipate which among those were a higher priority for 15 and 16. Part of it has to do with that ordinance actually isn't that old. It's one of the more recent ordinances in our history. So, and we wanted to get a little bit more experience under our belt with that too. We've got, of course, a special event coming up in January, and there may be some other things that, are in store for us next year, and get another year under our belt before we tackle that one. Is there interest in moving that up? Those were the thoughts that we had.
No, I just wanted to get an understanding on why it was something that was going to be postponed, that's all.
Sure.
My other question, 2 more questions actually. On 3.1, it is recommended that we conduct a survey to measure public perceptions for additional commercial industrial development in our community. And that is proposed for a year from now. I think that, from my point of view, I would prefer to see that activity done sooner, just because I'm trusting that the economy is getting better, and knowing that we already have property that's got sewer and water and basically ready to build, if we can find a developer or a business who wants to move in. And I also think that, knowing that we'll be working on the comprehensive plan in 2016 in with greater emphasis, having this type of public information sooner is better.
So that's an excellent question for the board. This would be the Cobalt Community Survey again. We did it in November of 2012, and at the time we said we'll plan to do these every 3 years. So that's the only reason that's on there like that. We did get good response, as you recall. We got, I think, close to 50% response rate by doing it for whatever reason in that November-December range, and so I didn't want to monkey with it too much. If the data is important to the board and we want to do that survey sooner, we can do that. And that would be a question for the board, is do you want to do that sooner than 3 years? Because that's where we would get it from. We would, because we have about 1.5, 2 pages in that survey that we can customize the questions to hot topics. There's a couple hot topics sprinkled in here, and that's one of them, where we want to ask those questions. Is there interest from the board in moving that survey up sooner than a year from
Before
now?
I answer your question,
Yeah.
I'd like to ask another question.
Okay.
Under 2.2, we have the exact same verbiage.
Yep.
Conduct a survey to measure public perception regarding the Livingston County Sheriff Road Patrol.
Yep.
Both of those surveys are proposed for the same month. Would they be the same survey?
It's the same survey. We'll take a couple sections and customize them to those issues.
Well, my viewpoint is I'd like to see it done a little sooner.
Okay.
What did you have in mind?
By summer. June or
So
July.
June? Is there a better timing than others for surveys?
We can ask. My guess is that they might shy away from the summer. You want to get, I mean, if you recall, this was a 6 or 8 pages. It took 15, 20 minutes to fill out. We got great response rate at the time. I don't know if their numbers would tell us whether they're less apt to do that in the summer or not. My guess is they might
But
say
if their report is due in June, the survey would have to be started several months sooner.
for sure this one, yes. Yeah, we could start it
I
earlier than
really
that.
think it's, I'm not proposing, I'm just thinking that would be the completion date.
Okay. Is there interest in, or consensus of the board to move that up and do it in April, May time period? That's what we'd be talking about then.
It's proposed in November now?
That's when they'd go out and we'd start collecting them, is in November, December. We'd get the report in January.
Well, how much did that survey run? Wasn't it like 30,000?
No. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. It wasn't that much, though. I'll try to see if I can track that down.
Well, my only concern is moving it. We kind of thought that when we set methodology, we'll do it here, do it again in 3 years, and then I would assume that we're thinking we'll do it, possibly again in 3 years. If we keep on moving the ball, are we doing it more often than we've had chance to people perceptions change,
Also with the, road millage now, I see some progress happening on what we're going to be doing with that, and that might have a good impact on the survey, so,
Have questions down the road?
yeah.
Improve road
And plus,
maintenance.
we already have some things in the pipeline, so maybe we don't want to do it too early till we have some things,
Matt, what are your thoughts about getting that information earlier?
My thought was that we're going to, when we had the work session with the Planning Commission, we said we're going to concentrate on the maps right now, but as time permits, we're going to go ahead and move into the whole comprehensive plan upgrade. And so from the standpoint of being ready to market ourselves to developers and others coming to the community, especially under that business and commercial, industrial development, that was why I was thinking it would be better to know the community's thoughts on how much and where to put it on those types of issues sooner rather than later.
But was there going to be a different survey for the businesses versus
There
the...
would be a different one, and we said we would do that sooner than 3 years. You recall the business one.
Is that the one that you're referring to, Matt?
Yeah, under 3.1. There's also another survey to be done under 1.5, and that's more of a, I don't know.
So 3.1, not the first survey, but the second one, where it says February of 16, that would be 2 years removed from our last business survey. We said we were going to do that quicker than 3 years because we thought we could have a measurable impact with the strategies we've been implementing.
That was a year ago that we did that?
It was February of this year, yeah.
So, I mean, kind of the way I see this is, in 1.5, conduct survey to measure public perceptions, November of 2015, is kind of an accurate statement of what we did in 2012.
Yes.
Then you've just bled it over into other things, saying, oh, well, we can try and get some of this information during this survey too, a couple different categories. Is that?
Yeah, right, yeah, they overlap, for sure.
And so, I mean, I don't know how much, as far as in the master planning process, I don't know how much that survey is going to give you with the amount of time that people put into that in the master planning process. I mean, that really is more involved, residential input than a survey, I would think.
A survey is a pretty normal instrument to use in a master plan process, and it gets fairly in-depth. It would be valuable information to have. I think if we're hoping to get much out of it for that, we may be premature, because we're not going to put together the action plan until 2016. I think the reading between the lines here, the comprehensive plan, the priority for that is not necessarily high. We've basically committed to, we're not going to lose sight of it. We put it out there. 2016, we're going to tackle that and come up with a plan. That plan may be, do a chapter a year until it's done, kind of a thing, but that there's enough going on between now and then that are basically elements of the master plan or things that fall under the master plan to be making progress, and that we would come up with a more rounded plan in 2016. I don't know that we'd be ready to say, and these are all the questions we'd love to have answers to by then. Well, there's probably going to be another opportunity, maybe 2 or 3 years after this survey, to ask the master plan type questions, is a thought.
What's the pleasure of the board when it comes to the surveys? Keep them as is, or we'll move it up?
I prefer to see it moved up. Just the sooner we get the information, the quicker we can act on it.
Does anybody have a strong argument for not moving it?
Well, I'm with Larry. If we're going to do them every 3 years, I'd kind of like to keep them in the same cycle,
Yeah, I think sometimes people feel surveyed to death on
Right.
things like that, and we just did a survey. We do surveys on the roads. We've done surveys on. It may be better just to. I understand where you're coming from. but I think that, I kind of like the idea of keeping it consistent.
Well, if we anticipate some questions on our first year of road maintenance improvements, I would recommend that we wait till November, because we'd have a whole year.
That's probably,
That's what would sway me in that direction, if that we're to use that as a tool. Anybody? Larry, you have any other thoughts?
Nope.
Keep it as it is? Okay. Other comments from the board? James, do you have any final comments?
Thank you for the retreat, for this work. These are important documents for us, and you'll see it translated in the budget to come. If you have further thoughts, please let me know. We look forward to achieving results. We will have the final draft on next board meeting agenda for formal approval. If there are any changes in anything based on further conversations internally, we'll communicate that to you.
Okay. If there's no other comments or questions this evening, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Support.
Motion by Trustee Harper, second by Trustee Kalani. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Hey, I like the